Role-playing games involve a lot of numbers, reading, and complex systems. It can all be a bit intimidating, but we've got your back.
There's a place that's full of cheer. You'll see.
Here are the 10 best RPGs for beginners. Number 10, South Park: The Stick of Truth. Look, if you like South Park, you probably already tried The Stick of Truth, but we feel it's important to highlight how high quality this game is to people who may not enjoy Matt and Trey's sense of humor on the TV show. We would go so far to say that more so than the movie or any one season of the show, this game is the most thoughtful, well-realized, and deliberate project the creators have ever been involved with. It's so funny, over the top, and it's got a fairly simple turn-based system that all features the same intentionally cheap-looking animation as the show. It's also the best South Park game. A high bar, we know. Number 9, Yakuza Zero. Yakuza 1 was a great starting point for players, but after that, pretty much every game in the series opened with a visit to the graveyard, recapping the body count of the previous game. If that sounds grim, it really isn't. The Yakuza games have a romantic attitude towards the criminal underworld, but all that lore did not endear itself to new players. Thankfully, then came Yakuza Zero, which still has a heck of a long story showing the origins of the series' first protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu, and fan favorite, Goro Majima, during the Japanese real estate boom in the 1980s. You'll get all the random battles, power-ups, and progressive systems you would expect of a role-playing game, but with a bombastic beat-em-up system. And if you're really hardcore, a cabaret club minigame. Yakuza Zero rules. Number 7, The Outer Worlds. When putting together this list, the names of Fallout and Elder Scrolls were in the running, but in truth, those popular Bethesda games were gigantic behemoths that players can sink hundreds of hours into before even looking into their further expansions. No matter how inviting those games are initially, does anyone really finish them? Then there's Obsidian Entertainment, who have their own storied history with the Fallout series, and The Outer Worlds, a game which condensed the decision-making first-person role-playing gameplay into a game which caps out for completionists around 40 hours. This is all thriller, no filler, and if you like it, step right up to those bigger games that we mentioned. Number 7, Undertale. Toby Fox's famous game was presumed to be a simple homage to Earthbound, but shortly after launch, word of mouth swelled to grand acclaim, showing Undertale had much more to it than its sources of inspiration, allowing players to avoid causing harm to enemies and restore the broken relationships between friends, family, and the monster society. It's a game that is made with a lot of consideration, and it's gentle and kind in a way that most RPGs simply are not. For a game that can be complete in just 3 hours, it left a sizable impression in the world of games culture with its endearing characters and celebrated soundtrack. Number 6, Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is part of the long tradition of isometric third-person RPGs on personal computers, dating all the way back to the 1980s, and incorporates many of the tabletop systems that were the building blocks of game design. This is a game whose story should not be spoiled, but its themes are too good not to share. It's all about choices, constant choices, meaningful choices. But unlike most games, you aren't simply altering or shaping the world, you're developing a character who will reach different levels of enlightenment or ignorance about the human state based off your decisions. Give it your time, and it will stay with you long after the credits roll. Number 5, Pokemon. RPGs have always been a significant genre in video games, producing some of the most influential titles of all time. But in the 1980s and the mid-1990s, RPGs, especially from Japan, were not particularly successful in North America. Too much reading, and the gameplay, you just pick it, you don't even get to do it? Americans will never go for that. One Final Fantasy VII and Pokemon later, and turn-based games dominated the industry around the world. Pokemon connected with players with its adventurous sense of exploration and connection to its personable pocket monsters. So which Pokemon game should you play? Honestly, if you're just starting off, any of them are just fine, as long as they have Jigglypuff. That's all that matters. Number 4, Costume Quest. Double Fine seems to always be too early or too late to the party whenever they launch their brilliant games. Case in point, Costume Quest, which launched exclusively digitally on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 at a time when digital console games were often overlooked by mainstream audiences. Costume Quest is an adorable Halloween-themed RPG which brilliantly balances their objective reality with the imaginative perspective of these small children. It's so lighthearted and funny, with some very well-observed characters written by Tim Schafer and Elliot Roberts. This October, give this game a shot. It's a perfect fall companion. Number 3, Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. Man, it is easy to forget how suspicious fans were of Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic Republic. I mean, sure, the developer already proven themselves with Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, but why on earth were they making an Xbox exclusive? And it was launching in the traditionally dry period of mid-July? Yep, it appeared to be an oddity, but instead it was the definitive moment when BioWare cracked its signature style of gameplay and influenced the industry at large, before adapting it into their own original property, Mass Effect. This game takes place thousands of years before the Star Wars films, so it really doesn't require any knowledge of the Star Wars lore. It's just a darn good RPG. Anyone can enjoy Knights of the Old Republic. Number 2. Chrono Trigger. As previously mentioned, RPGs were not all that popular with Western mainstream audiences, despite their own sizable audience. And putting together a list like this, without at least one classic JRPG, would feel disingenuous, as the slower gameplay largely holds up if the initial quality is there. Chrono Trigger is the definitive 16-bit RPG. Bringing together all-star talents in multiple fields, this time-traveling adventure is the closest thing the Super Nintendo ever had to a modern AAA game. And yeah, that's a bold claim for sure, but spend a few minutes with Chrono Trigger and you'll become enraptured by its curious tone and brilliant story of a band of time-crossed friends turned heroes. From its music to its graphics based off of Akira Toriyama's art, few games are as effortlessly evocative as Chrono Trigger. Number 1. Persona 5 Safety Mode. Yeah, you probably saw this coming. Persona 5 is a great game. Persona 5 Royal is a better game. Heck, they're the most popular JRPGs of the past several years, with their excellent visual style and music. But we want to talk specifically about Safety Mode, a version of the game which has all the Persona 5 experience without any of the challenge. And we mean none. Once your team gets beat, the game will ask if you want to continue. If you say yes, you're back at full health. And the enemies, well, they aren't so lucky. This mode might be overkill if you're the type of person to watch a full list about RPGs, just saying. But if you know someone who wants to get into a new series or read a new manga and find the act of risk-reward gameplay unnecessary, well, tell them to step right up to Persona 5. It's got a great story, and its mode might not be for everyone, but it's perfect for people who want to just get right to the story. And there you have it. Those are the 10 best RPGs for beginners. So where are you? A master, or are you just starting off? Either way, we probably got something here for you at Game Rant. So keep clicking around, and we'll see you soon.